Thank you for checking in. This is Justin Duarte from Next Level Catching Academy. For those that might be newer, we have been serving the catching community here in Southern California for over a decade now. And I have been serving as an assistant coach or a head coach, both at the college and at the high school levels for over 15 years. And so we want to bring just a small series of mini episodes to help equip coaches and to empower them to develop their catching staffs. We know and understand that winning and competing at a championship level is almost impossible when you only have average catching behind the plate. All right, so in this short episode, we are going to focus on physically preparing your catchers for the upcoming spring season. So we typically are going to have 4 to 5 weeks here from December into January a bit, where baseball kind of slows down a little bit. And we want to create a program for guys, a well-rounded program for your catchers to get them ready for the grinding, sessions of bullpens, the inner squads, and the longer days of practice there as we get into the middle of January. So let's start off with the strength training component. As we get into the strength training component, we want to create a system for them where they're lifting, not just necessarily lifting, but where they're working on strength 5 days a week. And we want these exercises, yes, to include your traditional barbell dumbbells, your deadlifts, your squats, your power cleans, lunges, but we also want to make sure that they're hitting some of the smaller muscles through their hips, perhaps with some ankle cuff weights. And with this, we want to include some box work. We want to include some single leg bounding, perhaps even some sled pulls is a great way for them to improve their explosiveness. There's a lot of lateral sled work that they can do, lateral pulling of sleds. And absolutely, we all know that we want our catchers to be strong through their lower body and through their core. But we also need to make sure that they're hitting their back and their shoulders. Okay. Usually most baseball players, just in general, you probably don't have to put a lot of biceps, triceps, or chest in there. They'll typically do that on their own. But we also want to make sure that they're getting their calves and their forearms. They can do that nearly almost every other day, as those are small muscle groups. Okay. So that's about 5 days a week of strength training. Let's move on to the second component of flexibility. We want to give them 3 days a week, 20 to 25 minute routines. And we want the routines to be different type of yoga activities. Nowadays, one thing that's been noted as being helpful are the CARS activities, the movements, the very, very slow movements. Yes, they help for all kinds of mobility because that's including the flexibility with some strength through some of those smaller muscles. So make sure that we have 3 days of flexibility, and then we move on to conditioning. Again, 3 days of conditioning. And we don't necessarily need the conditioning to just be a straight sprints or long distance running. Let's implement some things that will help their skill, specifically for throwing. So let's add in some jump rope activities. Let's add in agility drills just for overall dynamic movement out of their stance. Let's make them start out of that secondary stance, perhaps. Agility ladders is another good one to improve footwork. Okay, we can do some sprint work, obviously, maybe some interval runs that are maybe 400 meters, maybe 800 meters. But let's round that out for them so that these catchers can have some fun with it, and so it's not just becoming monotonous. Okay, so 3 days a week of conditioning. The skill development, maybe that drops down to 2 days. You may not have a lot of formal practices going on, especially through late December and early January. But if they can get off of a machine to do some receiving or some blocking, that'd be fantastic. And then finally, we'll round this out with some arm care. So 3 days of arm care is a good point for them, but we really want them to be intentional with their work because this is a great time for them to work on improving their arm strength. Now, obviously, a long toss throwing program where they're getting out to 100, 200, 220 feet is fantastic because they have a day or two of rest in between. Your guys should be on a 3 day a week a J-Bands program, even kind of through the fall and even moving into and through season. And then obviously we have a lot of great stuff to add to this with the weighted balls and some things that pitchers are doing. I would say just let's be careful with the max out pull downs. For some guys, that's going to maybe lead them into injury. So maybe some controlled pull downs with some of those heavy balls, but some components of, even if it's just the external rotation with some of those weighted balls, would be fantastic for them. Again, 3 days a week for that arm care. So thank you for listening in. Feel free to share this with your coaching colleagues. If you love some more resources, we do have an online catching curriculum for coaches at nextlevelcatchingacademy.com. We have a special tab just for coaches. Let's press on. Let's help develop those catchers and compete at the highest level possible. Take care, guys.